So in this video, we are going to talk about how to describe a graph. And you can see here we have a histogram. A histogram, if you remember, is when the bars are connected. So a bar graph would be separated bars. Histogram is when the bars are continuous. We have a histogram we made a few years ago from our advanced algebra students, and we just asked them how many shoes they own. And so we graphed how many pairs of shoes they own, 0 to 5, 5 to 10. In a histogram, you remember, if I own 5 pairs of shoes, so if I own 5, because you see 5 is here and here, the 5 would be in this category. We always round up with that. So if they're tied, it goes to the next bar. So like the 10 would be here, the 15 would be here, if that makes sense. So when we describe a histogram, one of the acronyms that we use in AP Stats is SOCS, and you'll see that on my board in the room actually. It stands for shape, outlier, center, spread. So you can see here we have shape, outlier, center, and spread. We also added peak just to talk about in this class, but that's how we describe graphs is SOCS. That's very common throughout statistics, whether you take it in high school or college, and it's just a nice acronym to help you remember what you should use to describe a histogram. So we're going to look at this, and we're just going to look at the histogram. We're not going to calculate things. We're just going to be looking at it and making our best estimate. So sometimes we can have different answers here, and there's some graphs that are easier to calculate than others. So for instance, if I want to do the outliers, when I look at this histogram, I can see that it's right skewed, right? Which makes sense for shoes. More people own less shoes. You might consider this bar a histogram, an outlier, but there is kind of a bunch of ones here, and there's not a big enough gap here for me to think that that's an outlier. So I might mention the gap when I'm describing this graph, but I would not call this last bar an outlier, so I'm going to say that there's none. Now, when I look at the shape, I already just said that, right? I drew the picture. We said it was right skewed. So I can fill that out. Notice I skipped center. That's a little more work. The peak, where's the height of the graph? The peak would be between 0 and 5 shoes. Okay, we can see that's the highest bar, right? And then the spread, how far do we spread these out? It goes from 0 shoes to 55 shoes. So 0 to 55 is what we're looking at. Now, when I'm doing the center, that's the one that takes a little bit longer. So you can do, I'm going to see how many total shoes I have here. So I'm going to go 15 plus 12 is 27, plus 6 is 33, plus 3 is 36. See how I'm counting the tops? And then 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. So there's 42 total people that were asked for this, right? 42 total. So where would the center of 42 be? Well, we divide by 2. And when there's an even number of people, subjects, whatever it would be, then we have 2 different centers. So I'm going to divide by 2 and get 21. So between my 21st and 22nd data value is where the center is. So when I'm counting, I can see that the first 15 are here. So then the 16th through the 27th, I'm going to add 12 to that 15. The 16th through the 27th values are in this category right here. So that's where 21 through 22 would lie. So I'm going to say that my center is between 5 and 10 shoes. I could have counted backwards starting over here too, but I just chose to go left to right. So that's how I describe that. My center, I try to find where the middle of those points are. And you don't have to divide by 2 and figure it out. You can also just kind of count. That's something that a lot of people do. When we're looking at the spread, remember the spread includes outliers. Even though we didn't have any in this graph, I just want you to be reminded of that. So the next one, we have the number of bedrooms in dwelling by advanced algebra students. So they have a house, an apartment, wherever you live, how many bedrooms do you have in that area? So you can see that we graphed it here. It makes sense that most kids have like 3 to 5 bedrooms, right? 3 to 6. If you have a couple members in your family, if it's just you and your parents, let's say, there's probably 2 bedrooms you need, right? You don't need a lot. Some people have more bedrooms than they need, and some people don't quite have enough. So you can see that from this graph, that the majority of people have a bedroom for every person in their family, or some people share, right? That's pretty common. So I'm going to have you pause the video, and I want you to try to figure out if you can just label as much of this as you can when you SOX it, and then I'm going to fill it in for you quick. So go ahead and pause the video. So when I looked at this one, I didn't think we had any outliers. The shape I would call fairly symmetric. There's no skewness. Some people think it gets to be maybe left skewed here. We don't want to go that far. Just look at the overall picture. When I go like this, fairly symmetric, right? And then my peak is obviously between 4 and 5 bedrooms. And make sure you're labeling this. We don't just write 4 to 5. And then my spread is from 1 bedroom to 7 bedrooms, because I didn't have any from the 0 to 1 or any after more. So 1 to 7 bedrooms is the spread. Now the center, when I added all these numbers up, I got 41. So 41 total kids. When I divide that by 2, I get 20.5. So that means my 21st value is my center. So my 21st value would be not here. There's 1 plus 3 is 4 plus 11 is 15. So the first 15 are in these peaks right there in those bars. So then where's my 21st? Well, if I add 16 to 15, I get 31. So that means my 21st is in this one right here. I don't know where. I don't know if it's 4 or 5, but I know it's in that bar. So my center is between 4 and 5 bedrooms. Hopefully you guys got that figured out when you paused it. So the last one we're going to do, oh, sorry, maybe not the last one. Let me see what I got here. There I have randomly this question. I know this isn't in your notes, but this is on your Excel math, so I'm just going to talk about it quick. It says draw a relative frequency histogram for 8 to 10, 11 to 13, blah, 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 blah. So here's the following data. So what happens is you're going to count how many values are between 8 and 10, the first category. So when I count 8 to 10, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me double check I didn't miss any. Yep, I got 5. So there's 5 values out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 5 out of 20. So the relative frequency, what's different about that than just doing bars, notice on the sides here, they have decimals. Relative frequency is the percent that occurs. So 5 divided by 20 is 0.25. So I need to find which of these graphs have the 8 to 10 at 25%. This one definitely doesn't. This one does, I think. This one is too high, and that one's too low. So there's my answer, A. Now, if there were 2 that had 25%, which could happen, then I'd look at the 11 to 13s. So 11 to 13s, I'd underline. I think that's it. So that means I have 3 out of 20. When I take 3 divided by 20, I get 0.15, so that it should be at 15%, and you can see that A is. And by then, I think you'll have only one option left on Excel math, but you could keep going. You could then do the 14 through 16, the 17 through 19, and you would hopefully have the bars be at the same spot. So that's just a tip for your Excel math. Then, the last one you're going to do is make a histogram on your own. So commonly, in real life, you're probably not going to do a lot of histograms. You're going to use a computer to make a histogram for you because nobody wants to see a hand-drawn graph. But in order to understand that the computer's doing it right, we want you to do those in class. And we want you to be able to make some by hand so you can realize what's involved in that. So I'm going to make a histogram of the Major League Baseball salaries. I have to decide what to go by for millions of dollars. And if you look, the Dodgers are the highest. This is the 2014 data. The Dodgers have 235 million. And if you go all the way down, the Houston Astros are the lowest with about 44 million. So I have to decide what to go by with my graph. I like to start with 0 here. And I'm going to do the bottom, I'm going to do their salaries in millions. So then I'm going to start, and I'm going to say what would fit here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 spaces. So I can't go by like 10 millions, because that'd be 170 million. So I'm going to go by 20 million. And you can decide what you think works for this. I wouldn't want to go by like 50 million, because then everyone would be under the same bar, and that's not going to give me a good display of the data. I want to find a number that's going to make the data be displayed well. So I'm going to pick 20. So I'm going to put 20 here, and then 40, 60, and keep going. And there's all my data, because my highest one was 240 or 235. So I didn't have to do 260. So now I'm going to count the number of teams. I think I can go by ones here, but first I should really count how many teams are in this category. So the 0 to 20 million has no teams. 40 million to 60 million, if I come over here, 40 million, I'm going to round to the nearest. 40 million to 60 million has 2 teams, right? 2. Then I'm going to go for 60 to 80. 60 to 80 has 2 teams also. 80 to 100. Oh, there's a lot there. 80 to 100. We go all the way here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 teams there. 100 to 120. Right there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams here. And then we'll keep going. 100. That's 100 to 120. I can tell now my bar graph's going to be able to go by ones, so I'm going to just number this by ones. Or my histogram, I'm sorry. I don't know why I said bar graph. And I might have to make one bigger one here. And then on the side, I'm going to label this. I'm out of room on my side, but I'm just going to draw an arrow. You have room on your side. So this label, I need the label on the side. I'm just going to draw this down here, and I would say number of teams. So put that on your side. You have a little bit of room there, more than I do. So now if I was going to start, I'm just going to go ahead and start drawing this. So the 20 to 40 was my first one. Nope, 40 to 60, sorry. There were 2 teams. So there's my bar graph. And then it went 2 again. And then 80 to 100 went 10. So I have to go all the way up. And I'll go 1 higher. And then 100 to 120 was 6. Now, and I could color these in any time. I'll just do it now since I'm here. Now let's do 120 to 140. That looks like it'd be 3 teams. So we'll go here. And then 140 to 160 is 2. 160 to 180 is 2. So both those are 2. 180 to 200 is just 1 team. And then 200 to 220, 1 team. And 220 to 240, 1 team. So there is my histogram that I can make by hand. Now, if we wanted to, we could SOX this, right? So if we were going to look at the shape, I think I might call that right skewed. See a little skewness to the right there? Salaries tend to be right skewed. We've talked about that before. Outliers, I don't see any. They all fit in. Granted, there's a couple teams that pay them really have a big salary, but there are no gaps, so I think there's no outliers. The center appears to be around 80 to 100 million, but I should double check that maybe and count. And then the spread is 40 million to 240 million. So you could SOX it verbally there. You didn't have to write anything down. So hopefully that makes sense to you. If you have any questions tomorrow, make sure you let me know.